Great, good morning. We're going to call the Board of Public Works and Capital Assets meeting to order of November 8th, 2022. Roll call.
Dukniak here.
Gale here.
Seifert here.
Segal here.
Thank you all. Approval of minutes, item number 3 from October 11th, 2022. Any additions, corrections, subtractions, notations? Otherwise, we'll take a motion.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of 10/11/2022.
Gale will second. Roll call.
Dukniak, aye.
Gale, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Segal abstain.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4 is informational review of common council actions related to public works and capital assets. You guys.
I'm going to turn it over to Matt Sullivan really quickly on just a couple items. It's actually been pretty light with the common council, but I'd like to report out that the mayor, with assistance from Mike Sullivan, has identified a new board member. Very interested, and I think we can say eminently qualified, Mike, for this type of work. So we're going through the rigors and backgrounds and things like that. Hopefully we can get him formally appointed by the December meeting, but certainly before the new year.
Very cool.
There's 2 items that were passed, one on October 18th, and that was a resolution supporting the requiring the repair of the Union Pacific grade railroad crossing at East Forest Hill. It's east of Howell. So that was approved. We're actually going through the process. A letter has been sent to the railroad and the commissioner's office. So we have not gotten a response back yet. They have 30 days to respond. So, we're in that process right now, and on November 1st, the council authorized us entering into a contract negotiations with Collins Engineering for the design services of South 6th Street Bridge over the branch of Oak Creek. So that one is just south of Marquette. It's a full replacement.
Carly, sorry, can you catch the doors? Yeah. Just one of them, Darren. Better? Item number 5. Consider a motion to authorize the utility engineer to amend the existing professional services agreement with Jacobs in a not to exceed amount of $100,000.
So this involves, we have a general services contract with Jacobs, and we use them for odds and ends projects, study projects mostly. Most recently, they were working on the powder activated carbon project for us. We went through an analysis of consultants, looking for a consultant to help us out on our underground facilities rehabilitation project, formerly called the CT tank project, very large project. We're starting fresh, starting new. We're looking for alternatives from ground zero, and really all we're doing is we want to make sure that it's a very pure process. And so we gave the consultant just the DNR code compliance concerns. So these are the things we need to solve. We don't want any extras. We don't want anything special. And we reviewed those consultant submittals. We had 2. Jacobs came out on top by a fair amount. So we've negotiated a contract with them. This would be handled through the general services contract, adding $100,000 to that helps that along. The contract is about $250,000. And at first we sort of gulped a bit and said, boy, that seems like a lot of money, and then went back and looked at the analysis that we had their former CH2M Hill in 2012-13, and that was $225,000. So it really is quite a good deal, and largely that's based out of, was identified by the other consultant actually, was identified or largely out of the fact that Jacobs has all of that background material. They've been working at our plant since 1997. Off and on different projects. All the major projects to date have been done by them, with the exception of the master plan evaluation work that was done by C.M. Smith, who was the other consultant that we looked at. It was a very difficult choice between the 2 of them. They were both eminently qualified. But really what tipped the scale for us is that Jacobs really got what we're doing here, understood that this is a focus on the alternatives analysis and not looking at sort of the construction phases and how do we build the project and those sorts of things. It's really on let's get a very quality evaluation of many different alternatives, and then be comfortable that we're picking the most appropriate.
Mike, is this one that you expect, does this encompass the entire kind of thought process, or is this kind of rolling where it gets added to over time?
This is, if we move forward with the design of one of the alternatives, this will grow.
Any questions, Bob? Fred? Rich?
Yep, Mike, that chlorine tank, is that what you had shown me on the tour of the treatment plant a month or so ago? Okay, the one that's underground?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, buried underground, under the groundwater level,
Okay.
doesn't have membrane on the roof. Yeah, there's a number of issues.
and was it DNR? There are like 7 or 8 critical areas that need
Yes.
to be addressed?
Yep.
Okay, so that makes sense then. Okay, I'm fine.
Great. Anything else? Take a motion on that.
Seifert moves to authorize the utility to amend the existing professional service agreement with Jacobs and not to exceed the amount of $100,000.
Dukniak, second.
Roll call?
Dukniak, aye.
Gale, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Great, thank you. Item number 6 then is to consider a motion to reject all the bids for the Centennial Sanitary Relay Project. You got Mike?
Yeah, so this project, there's a manhole just west of the Fire Station 1, kind of in the creek area over there off of Centennial, south of Centennial, where the creek has meandered back closer to perhaps its original location, and it's impacting a manhole. It's making it more difficult to get at. It's a project we wanted to address, but because of the box culvert underneath Centennial, it's a pretty difficult project. We couldn't just tie that sewer directly in. So we had to do some work south there. It ended up being a combination of stream bank work and sewer work as well. Spent an awful lot of time, an awful lot of money on designing and getting permits from the Army Corps of Engineers and the DNR in order to try and make this happen. We then went out for bids, and you can see the bids here. They're relatively close together, but at a minimum of $261,000 to save one manhole that isn't in imminent threat at the moment, it didn't seem to be worth it to us. We had originally budgeted $150,000. So at this point, we'd like to reject the bid. We do know that at some point in the future, there is a possibility we're going to have to come back and try and do something out here. We just don't think that this is the right price.
Well, Mike, right now, we don't have a problem really to worry about.
Yeah, it's difficult to access. We have to actually lay a ladder down like you see on some of the snow crevice type. We have to do that sort of a thing to get to the manhole. But we're only out there once every couple of years, and so that's the good news for us. The manhole is not an imminent structural threat. We don't, and it's been like that for a number of years. This is not something that just occurred. So we don't think in another 2 years that manhole is going to be a threat. But long term, probably something. Perhaps we can look at some different options there that work on more stream bank correction or adjustment that we don't have to do as much of the sanitary side.
Thank you.
Anything else, Bob? Otherwise, we'll take a motion there too.
Dukniak, move to approve the motion to reject all bids for the Centennial Sanitary Relay Project.
Galley seconds.
Roll call.
Dukniak, aye.
Gale, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Galley, aye.
Great, thank you. Item number 7 is the motion, consider a motion to approve utility vouchers for payment in the amount of $235,948.49. Questions? Anything you want to point out? Otherwise, we'll
Galley moves to approve invoices in the amount of $235,948.49.
Seifert, seconds.
roll call.
Dukniak, aye.
Gale, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Galley, aye.
Great, thank you. Item 8 is the informational admin and ops reports. Anybody have anything they want to point out or any questions for the crew here?
Not really. The only thing I'd point out on engineering is the fact that we did get delivery of all of our PLCs for our PLC project that's been delayed for over a year now, so we're really happy to see that. They actually came a little early.
I saw that. It's like,
They
did you show up out of the blue? Yeah.
Right. We'll take it.
Mike, I do have a question, just reading through some of the reports, and talking about the fire hydrant maintenance program. And I think it was like 41 valves are stuck open.
Yes.
So what does that mean? Then why is just water turned off to those hydrants?
No, so the hydrants, I think there's 3 hydrants that are, that need repair. Those hydrants aren't functioning. I can't say proof positive, but generally those hydrants aren't functioning at the moment. On the valves, what happens is the packing where the shaft is for the valve starts leaking, so we jam them open to stop that from leaking.
Oh,
Those are jammed. They're functioning and they're
Okay, so
open.
they are still
Yeah.
functioning.
So we just know if we try and use them, they're going to start leaking again.
Okay.
So they're on a list of needed repair. We just haven't been able to.
Okay, good enough, thank you.
Mike, I did have a question on the, on your, job, daily function page. How close do you expect to get to your yearly goals when all said and done?
Great question. We're not going to do so good on hydrant flushing. We've been filling in as construction coordinator since that position's open, so the distribution staff's been filling in there. We also diverted a lot of time when we did that satellite leak detection, pull people off of that. So we intentionally chose to sacrifice flushing to do that, so we know we're going to fall short on that. Operating valves, same thing. We just ran out of time. We're doing too many other projects in order to get to that. So we did repair an awful lot of hydrants this year and get them back in service, which is great. But that comes at a sacrifice. And it's partially because we're just down on staff. So we're going to be a little bit low.
Distribution staff is low?
Yes.
Where are you at in bodies wise?
Well, they're fully staffed, but they're helping out on the construction coordinator side. So we're taking 1 to 2 people a day out of distribution to do that.
I have a question, Mike, about plant operations.
Yeah.
The monthly peak days seem to increase almost 11%.
Yeah.
Just for the month, I'm just trying to figure out, there's 1 month, what happened?
So comparing 21 to 22 is always difficult, and that's why a number of years ago we added that 5-year average. Because last year, if you just don't have as much flow, and November is one of those, or October is one of those months that it could go either way. You could have some dry, warm weather, and people are using water. We had a really strong month this month. I'm not exactly sure why. What I look at is compared to the average, and all of ours, the last couple of years, we're doing really strong compared to the average, but I think we had some peaks, and we always go in those peaks and valleys. And so we're sort of riding that out a little bit, combined with October this year was a strong month. I don't think wasn't anything unusual about October. Yeah. I mean, it's not like we were doing some, tank maintenance or something like that.
Okay.
Anything else in the reports, guys? Anything else to add from the staff? Cool. All right, then we'll move on to item number 9. Is consider a motion to approve the various capital assets and project requests. Continue with staff recommendation for 2023.
So I will start this out, and then we've got the staff from the different areas that can talk specifically about the projects as well. On the very first sheet here, I'll just kind of walk through this briefly. I'll note the first sheet and the last couple of sheets, and then we'll talk about the individual projects as much as you like. We split it out into each of our job function areas, distribution, treatment plant, and then sometimes we'll have some administrative type projects, sometimes we'll have some engineering projects, and often we'll always have major projects or larger projects at the bottom. So distribution, I'll let them go through that. This just sort of gives you a general summary sheet, gives you a bit of a 5-year history on where we've been in the past. With that, we can go into the individual projects. On the back couple pages that we'll get to at the end, the second last page is projects in progress. So you can see what projects that were previously approved that we're still working on and where those stand from a dollar standpoint. And the very last sheet is a cash flow analysis, and that demonstrates how we have the ability to commit this amount of money to the capital budget. So with that, Darren will be first.
Morning, Darren.
Good morning. How are you doing? Good. First item that I have on there is annual meter exchange program. We do this every year. It's on there. We order 450 meters. That one's on there again.
Rich, do you know Darren, by the way?
I do not.
So-
Sorry, Rich is a new member, so.
Yes, so Darren Aller, distribution manager over at the utility. Okay, you too, Rich. So yeah, the meters is just an annual thing. We put them in there every year. It's based on the unit price we get, which they hold for us through the middle of the year. And we're ordering pretty quickly because there's a lead time of anywhere from 6 months to a year on some of the products on there. So we just gotta make sure that we always have the inventory on there. Second item I have, truck replacement. We have a truck that's due for replacement based on our vehicle replacement policy. It's 12 years old, so it's one of our normal vehicles, so we just go ahead and that one is up for replacement. Second item is or third item is our smaller dump truck. It was set to be replaced last year. Having a hard time finding one. So now with this second installment on here, should get us one ordered, set to go. Hopefully we'll see it within a year. We did replace our bigger dump truck last year. Now we're trying to replace our smaller one that's also over 20 years old.
This is adding to something, sorry, Darren.
Yeah, so we did 70 last year,
Okay.
so 20 more this year gets us to 90. That's a more realistic number of being able to replace that truck. Cross-connection control software, just like any software, after a while, it no longer is supported. So this is the one that our cross-connection inspector goes into industrial buildings, checks for backflow prevention. This is something that is regulated and reported back to the DNR. Most of the businesses are on a 2 to 3 year cycle. So this is the new software that links up. You can take it in the field, it's handheld, do all of his reporting on there, and then his reports get sent to the DNR based on that. So these are all registered, reduced pressure valves. So just in case something happens, it's a cross-connection program that is well past its time and, like I said, will no longer be supported.
So Darren, is this software relatively standard in your business?
Yes, it is. So it's one that they use now. Now it's kind of a two-step process. So this one will bring it down to a one-step process. It'll streamline everything. And just like I said, the other one's so old, they're just not going to support
Yeah,
it
and the
anymore.
solution you're looking at works with everything we need.
Yes. And then the last one is nothing new. We're just been putting money into our vac truck, our combination sewer. I don't know if you're familiar with that truck. So that's a big one we got. So we're anticipating over $500,000. We do have a show coming up. We'll be going to get some more realistic numbers, find out what the order time is on something like that. So with this installment, that'll bring it up to $400,000. So we're getting a lot closer, and hopefully we'll be able to do this with one more installment next year and get the replacement program going.
Any questions for Darren? He's standing there? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike? I'd like to introduce yourself too. It's been a long time.
Good morning,
I
I'm Mike
haven't seen
Roby, a treatment plant manager.
Pleasure to meet you.
I have a tendency to too many details, so I'll go brief, and
Aye.
if you have questions, go right ahead. Our low-lift pump number 4 check valve replacement, it's long past its life, 15 years. We had it rebuilt last year, tried to fix it, it didn't work, so the option is to replace it with a new one. This company is the direct replacement, so there's no piping modifications. And the original valves were, from what I found out, not spec'd for raw water with the kind of silt and grit in there, so they didn't last that long. So this new one is the proper valve and should provide a longer life. And they're gonna give us a credit for the work they did last fall.
You guys putting that in, Mike, or somebody else?
Oh, they're gonna install it. Cleaning of the shore well, that little picture here for reference. That shore well hasn't been vacuumed out since before I was here, so at least 25 years. Some of the corners and the silt has accumulated to 4 to 5 feet in some areas, which affects our turbidity. When we start pumps, it'll get an inrush right away. And so a water quality issue. And
Mike, where is this?
that is underground or in the basement of our Shorewell building down by the lake.
Oh, okay.
So, and you can just see how deep that stuff is in some corners. So I'd like to get it vacuumed out. That'll allow us to have a little better water quality on pump starts, and we can inspect some of the corners that haven't been seen in a while, or any kind of cracks or pitting or something like that.
Looks like part of the sausage making process the public doesn't really regularly see, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, we tried to do this with our equipment last year, and it didn't work. We just don't have the proper equipment to be able to pull that height and pull it out.
And I'm finding it difficult to find a company that'll take this project. I have a guy coming, he's there probably right now looking at it. Chlorine contact chamber, you guys talked a little bit this morning about it. It's been recommended to have it inspected every 2 years. We're not able to bring it down for a dry inspection, so we have a dive crew come in. An engineering firm is hired to review the dive as it takes place or the video of it, and then form their own report on its stability. And this was done 2 years ago, so it's due this year. Replacement of the 2 chlorine feed pumps, we have 5. We're having some trouble with the style of pump that we have is a diaphragm pump. It has check valves, a lot of fittings, and I wanted to switch to a peristaltic pump, which is a tube type pump. It eliminates all those little plastic pieces that crack and need to be replaced quite frequently. So I'd like to get 2 of them, try them out. From everything I read, they're going to solve our problems. And if they're good, maybe going forward, we could get more. Filter 7 and 8, the corners have cracked from the building settling, from the additions that we've had in the past. A concern of water either getting in or out in the corners. So they have a flexible sealing system that will kind of move with the building as it moves. And it's right on the expansion line.
Oh, I had a question about this, Mike. I don't know about you guys. Bob, you maybe have seen this more often. So, I mean, concrete buildings are concrete buildings. So this is something that you folks know how to deal with, and it's expected over time that this kind of thing is going to happen.
Yeah, we do have an expansion joint right there. It's gone too long now. It's just expanded more, so it needs to be addressed. That's just an occasional thing. That joint was put in 99, that expansion, so a little bit of maintenance.
Replacement of the HVAC system at the treatment plant. Over the years, we've added on filters and another filter room. Original equipment in 1977 was designed for that footprint of the building as it was. Over the years, that footprint has changed quite a bit. Our locker room project had added a lot of different zones to it, and it's no longer able to function properly with the footprint that we have now. So, there was a study done, as you can see, that was recommended a replacement of the air handling unit and the ductwork, and then also adding a negative pressure for the lab for safety.
Incidentally, on here, which we didn't include, if you recall, we did that industrial controls assessment sponsored by the Department of Energy, done by the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. That team said replace this as well, and said because of the inefficiencies over time, you're going to save lots of energy when you get this done correctly. We also have, it's a hot deck, cold deck system, so they're both constantly running. That doesn't make any sense nowadays with the current controls that we have. So it was also recommended.
Do you have a feel over time what our treatment plant capital numbers look like over every year?
That's a good question. I can report back on you. They've gone up, I would say, over the last, say, 10 years. The trend has been up, but that kind of makes sense with the age of the plant and having to replace. Probably.
Without the HVAC system, it's kind of a small amount of money.
And that's where typically it is, I would say.
And then the next item is our autoclave. It's a sterilization unit in our lab. Over the years, we've been kind of chasing it and keeping it going. It's come to a part where it needs $2,500 in repairs to make it run properly. And I think that money would be better spent towards a new unit. It's been there 18 years, and the repair person was surprised, usually after 10, 15 years at the most, that these things are failing or replaced. So it's an important piece. If our glassware and our bottles aren't sterilized, their samples could turn bad just on that. So it's pretty critical that it runs at the proper temperature and pressure. And will give us $1,000 on our old one, so. All right.
Any questions for Mike? Rich, you good?
Good.
Cool. All right,
So I get to play Brian.
there you go.
He wasn't able to make it today, and that's fine. So East Forest Hill water main replacement, what we're looking at there is that stretch from Howell Avenue, just a little bit east. That's east of there has been replaced already. This piece had not been replaced. And we want to go ahead and do it. We're doing Howell Avenue, we're doing Susan, we're doing Forest Hill Manor. Sort of everything in this area is going to be done except that little piece. We also want to get there before the DOT comes and resurfaces the road. So that's what that one's all about. The next one is the Rawson Avenue water main. We're calling it spot replacement and hydrant relocation. The county is going to be doing a full reconstruct of Rawson Avenue. We have to get our hydrants out of their way. Part of the project, we do that fairly routinely. The second part is we've had a number of breaks down around the railroad crossing. And originally, we had looked at replacing that entire stretch of water main. And what we're finding now, first because of the lead time, the size of the pipe, but also because we were analyzing the breaks more, and we really have a pocket of bad area, not an entire stretch. So the cost nowadays, it's not worth replacing that entire stretch of main. We just want to do the spot that's particularly bad, and then also the hydrants that we have to do.
When's the county doing that, Mike?
2025, Matt? County Rawson Avenue reconstruction? 24. Rawson is 25. That's true. Rawson is 25, and our indication, because this is 20-inch main and they're telling us that's a year out for ordering that main, we wanted to make sure to get ahead of it so we're not impacting the project yet. Next project is 6th and Marquette. You heard Matt talk a little bit earlier about replacing the bridges on 6th. We want to get in and do the water main as well. This project in front of you here is just the design only for the 6th and Marquette. It's quite a long little stretch from the map there, but we'd like to have it all designed and ready to go. So we're able to get that constructed. We can have that done. The next piece is 13th Street, back down to another, county's doing that road. We have to get our hydrants out of the way and adjust our sewer manholes and things like that. Adjust valves. That's what this project is. It's really
Mike,
kind of.
sorry, I had a question.
Oh, yes, sir.
Going back, it was because I remember looking at this, and that's a whole lot of damn water main at some point
Yes,
to
it
replace.
is. Yes, it is. And we may not all do it all in 1 year, but we like to design it as a unit, and then we can kind of pick pieces if we want to. 6th Street is most likely going to be split into 2 projects, but it really depends on how the bridge work is done. If the bridge work is all done in 1 year and we're doing, a larger stretch of that road resurfacing or what have you, then we're going to want to get in. We have, again, pockets on 6, but those pockets are spread pretty uniform throughout the whole Drexel Rawson.
Is that just because it's time, or is it for quality, or
It's time. It's the age of the main that's out there.
that was because that's the original industrial?
Correct,
Right?
yeah.
What era is that? The early 60s? Mid-60s?
Yeah, mid-60s. Probably 68. I'm not sure if I mentioned it on here, but we have quite a few breaks on here. Yeah, 65 breaks over the last 10 years, or 12 in the last 10 years, 65 breaks total. And we can definitely point to pockets both on 6th and Marquette.
Okay.
And that's due to the external corrosion from the soils. So 13th, Drexel to Putes, same thing there. County is redoing that road, so we need to move our hydrants out of the way and adjust manholes and valves. Security and access control replacement. This is a project that's been kicked around for quite a while. Our existing access control, card reader system, security system has been in there since before I started the original stuff, and we upgraded the software once, but much of the equipment is the same. A lot of it was installed in 2010, so that we're still quite a bit older than it probably ought to be. The software is definitely not supported. The computer that it's on is a Windows XP computer. It's isolated from everything else, but yeah, that needs to be updated and corrected. We've been kicking this around because it is so costly, but it's not getting any cheaper. Now's the time to knock that out and get that done. We call it our Secure machine. We're also looking at trying to tie that into our remote stations. Remote stations have access control and security on them, but it's a separate system. So wondering if now is a good time to be able to combine that since we're getting better connectivity with those. In the old days, we did not have good connection with those remote stations. So we had a system that was designed to operate over very weak radio networks. Now we don't have that problem any longer. We have much stronger connection with them. Perhaps we can run this directly out of one system. So that provides video access down to the treatment plant as well from those remote stations, like I mentioned, access control, burglar alarm, fire alarm, that type of thing.
Mike, does this also include the intake at the bottom of the hill?
It will, yes. Yeah, that building's included in this. There's not as much down there, so the cost end of that is very low. But yeah, it'll include that. It'll be all tied in as one system. The piece we're not quite sure yet is how much of the hardware will be incompatible with anything that's out there today. So we know what's in our facility is a proprietary system. There's only one contractor in the area that's they're authorized to work on it. That's not a system we want. So we've done what we could. We've ordered a few parts on eBay. We continue to do that. We've had a number of failures on the circuit boards that are going bad. We have another set of boards for our main office and the treatment plant. Bought those off of eBay. This is not sustainable.
Well, I'm just a little concerned because of the development around it, just up on top of the hill.
Right.
And the activity of people and kids could create a problem as time goes on.
That's that project. Somewhat related is the remote station radio replacement. So all of our meter pits, pump stations, towers, they all have radio network back to the treatment plant. While we're putting in fiber, that's only going to touch a couple of the stations, very few of the stations actually. The rest of it will be maintained. The main link getting down to treatment plant will be handled via fiber, but we still need to have the radio backup in case the fiber goes down. We need immediate backup on that. It's not something we can wait for a number of hours to repair or something like that. So that has to still be maintained. This radio network, let's see, Brian have it listed in here. I think it was put in 2005. I was going to say 2007. So that's quite old. There again, we've been hunting for suppliers for some of the radios. 900 megahertz radios have been failing on us. We've had to replace those. We've got a stock of extras for that now. Our 5 gigahertz radios, we're having trouble getting those, but our older ones are not compatible with the newer ones. So if a radio goes down, we have to replace both sides of the radio link. If our master goes down at Sycamore Tower, it's all of those remote stations that it connects after. Well, it's not something that we really want to get into. And again, it's a reliability issue. So we do need to keep up. We're probably way behind on where we should have been on that, but you know, you get into that kind of it works, don't mess with it routine, and that's fine until it starts not working. So the next
All
one.
in, that actually includes the replacement of your radio systems?
Yes, it does. Yes, it's a replacement of all the radios. They're all about the same vintage. There's probably 15, there's probably about 15 sites. They are all listed there. All the pump stations, booster stations, elevated storage, meter pits, all of that is all included in the remote station. We have relay station at the police department. That will be replaced for a backup purpose, but that's where we're going to be able to connect the fiber to get that information back down to the treatment plant. So sanitary lining of large mains, we have been doing various sanitary repairs throughout the last several years, call it 5-6 years. It's probably around $700,000 or so. We do spot repairs, we do lining of different mains. This year we're going to be focusing on lining large mains. That's what this project is. So those mains that are 18 inch and larger, we're going to look at lining those that are deteriorated. We think if we get a nice block of that lining and specific to that as opposed to running all over in different areas, we're going to get a better price. That's what we're looking to do there.
What do we historically spend on that, Mike, per year?
It's about 700,000. Anywhere from 500,000 to I think the highest was like 800,000. kind of ebb and flow there a little bit. The goal originally was to say that we're going to do this for 5 years and then start tapering off. We're going to sort of catch up based on our NASCO rating that has been done, that really started maybe 5 years ago or so, when we hired a consultant to review all our video and prioritize some of the main rehab work. That ended up being quite a big pile. So we're trying to stay ahead of it. We created this sort of nice uniform spend on it. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight. There's always something coming up. What I will say is the items on the list are not as high a priority any longer. They're not as great a risk any longer. So that's the good news, that we can start evaluating. Sure, there's a dip in this line, and there shouldn't be, but does it really affect performance? Is it really there a risk of backup there and causing some damage? So we can start looking at that a little bit more, which we're actually pretty excited about.
Mike, is this all the 18-inch and above pipes that we're talking about?
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to look at. We're not going to line every one of them. We'll only line those that show deterioration. Particularly on, so I guess a good example is on the 21-inch that are concrete. Any of the concrete mains, a lot of times we'll get erosion on that top portion of the main. That can be solved by lining this. So it's based on our video analysis of the mains to see which ones could benefit from this repair. The next one is a sanitary model update and system plans. What we want to do here is, when we did our sanitary master plan, the model was created, it was calibrated, and all that was great. And then we've done a whole bunch of work. We want to add to that model and get current on the work that we've had done. So they're going to put that information into the model. They have to then recalibrate the model based on the flow meter information that we've gotten from MMSD. They're allowed us to use their meters. They'll put all that in, recalibrate the model, so we can have a model we can count on going forward. Secondly is to create system plans. They'll be computerized. We used to have an old book that you just open up the book in a particular quarter section and yep, that's where the sewers are, and this is what the intended flow in that area was. So if you have a development coming in, do we have enough sewer capacity for that? This is a quick and easy way to look at that. These will now be computerized. They have not been updated. I want to say 95 was the last time we updated those. They're fine. We generally, but you know, the development in the city, we've changed from what was planned in particular areas to something else. When we do that, we have to change that system plan because the flows are not in.
I might just make sure, Rich, understand this is important in terms of development.
Yeah. Yeah, if somebody,
Sewer can limit what you can do, which is.
right, and we don't want that. So yeah, we know what's out there. Lastly is the underground facilities rehabilitation project. What we're doing is we're just adding money to the reserve for that project so that we don't have to borrow as much when it comes time to actually do the project. At this point, as I mentioned earlier, we're at an alternatives analysis phase. So we don't really know what the project's going to cost yet because we don't have an alternative. We're going to look at a number of different alternatives and pick the one that makes the most sense for us.
And right now, globally, we're looking at that as Franklin as a continuing entity or as a non-entity, or what are we telling the consultant to consider for that factor?
Have to include them now. So what we're doing is we gave the consultant our current demand study and Franklin's current demand study that shows them their water demand dropping off over the next 20 years. So that's what we've got.
Mike, we're going back to the chlorine tank, the above. How are we doing with the PSC?
So first we have to go through alternatives analysis. Then we'll have meetings with the DNR and the PSC. Then we design the project and bring that to the PSC. So the PSC really is quite a ways down the road, unfortunately. We're going to try and involve them early and see if we can't get some direction, some buy-in. That's where we're going. We're also involving Franklin in that. We're going to invite them to our alternatives analysis meetings so they can see it from the ground up and understand exactly where we're coming from on this.
I know we were a little behind on meeting the DNR requirements.
Yes, and we've remained in contact with the DNR on that. They're still emphatic that it needs to happen, and we agree with them. There's no argument there. It's just about getting it done, and they seem to be understanding of where we're at, more accommodating of our position. So it doesn't sound like they want to come to blows. That's good news. We're not going to sit around and wait forever. We get that, but we think we're showing a really good faith here by starting this alternative, showing that we're doing something.
I had one other thought, Mike. Is the UV still part of our thought process?
It is not. So we are not saying UV or replace the existing, the old electrical or anything like that. All we're saying is, consultant, these are the 7 things the DNR identified as code of compliance issues. Go get alternatives surrounding that. If UV is part of it, it's part of it. If membranes are part of it, they're part of it. We don't want to influence, we don't want anyone to say that, oh, Creek asked for that in special or in particular. See, they're adding on. They don't absolutely need that. So we really want to focus on what absolutely is needed, and then we'll kind of
Because I know originally there was a lot of electrical work, and there was that well underneath everything.
Yep. And
So where are we considering that stuff? Because that back then, I mean, that was not that long ago. We thought those were priorities as well. So.
I think they're going to be involved. They're not. We are not saying we want to add UV, but I think there's a strong likelihood that it was part of the natural solution last time. I think it's going to be part of the natural solution this time, but I don't know that. We'll look at the alternatives and see where it goes. I think that when you address the clear well underneath those pumps, it's going to involve creating a new high lift pump station. That's going to require new electrical. So I think because all this stuff just dovetails together, I think it's going to be involved in it, but we don't want to be out there saying, we want this, we want that, we want that. We want to fix the tank. We want that to be very pure and not
Because ultimately, I mean, it's about water quality.
yes.
I mean, the UV, I think my recollection was we were one of the last one on
Us in Port Washington.
not to have it in our treatments operation.
Yeah, that don't have some barrier to pathogens like cryptosporidium, membrane, UV, or ozone. Everyone's got it, but us in Port Washington is working on it.
So we're not necessarily limited. If it percolates out of there.
That's part of the solution.
No,
We would absolutely embrace it, but we're not putting it as a requirement that you have to include. Not to say that a solution that the addition of that to a solution wouldn't make sense. It might, but that would be evaluated after the alternative is identified.
Is good.
But just the next is the projects in progress. I don't intend to go through them. If you have any questions on them, holler at any time. Go through them. And the last one is cash flow analysis. And again, I'm not going to go through too much on this, but it shows where the money is generated through the operating income and as well as the depreciation that creates the bulk of it. From that, we've got to fund the projects that are in progress. That's shown here. The proposed projects also shown here. And then there's a few little items back and forth. There's loan payments. There's an interfund loan between water and sewer. There's our debt service, that sort of thing coming down.
How many years are left in that loan, Mike? Do you know off the top of your head?
The interfund loan?
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought about that the other day and never looked it up.
Because there's supposed to be an interest rate adjustment done on that too,
There is, yes.
which is going to be impactful. It's
Yeah,
25 basis points north of prime, I think.
that's a great point. I'll bring that back next time.
North of Fed funds rate. I don't remember what the benchmark was.
With what we're paying, from what I recall of the payment schedule, I think we went on that. Principal was, the last principal was $250,000, so I think we've got under 5 years to go on that, but it could be in there someplace.
It was, and for Rich's sake, it was a couple $1 million.
Yeah, $2 million. So then at the bottom, it shows sort of the holdbacks, if you will, or restricted cash for various reasons, and then, of course, the very bottom line shows you what's left over after all of this is done. It's done that way. And I like to keep, especially now, I like to keep a fairly healthy number there. We've had quite a few capital budget amendments this year, either due to increased bids or projects that came up that we needed to do. That's what would kind of help.
All right. Lots of numbers. Any,
They're pretty high.
what's that, Fred?
I said the numbers are a little high.
They don't get any smaller over time, generally, right? Anything else, Rich?
Good.
Meg, I'll just, in the future, you can put this in your footnotes. I like a 5-year.
Oh, 10-4. Look back.
Yes, so you know, you get a picture what your, how it compares to history.
Well, we do have that on the front sheet
Yeah, there is.
that shows you what the total was spent in the last 5 years.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
there is an
But I'm, by column, I just,
Understood.
just kind of a variance,
Gotcha.
I have a question, Mike. It's not dealing with the meeting, but Sunday's paper had an article on water and quality, and they talked about the PFAS, and there were a few people that called me and wondered, do we have any problems? And I don't feel we have any problems, but it's caught the attention of a few people when you get the headlines that says water and contamination throughout the state.
It's being heavily studied now. The EPA has not come out with a regulation for it. We expect that, well, we expected that by the end of the year, and now it sounds like it's going to be the first part of next year. The state has regulations, has an MCL or a maximum contaminant level that they passed. That's 70 parts per trillion. The lake has been tested at 2 parts per trillion, so it's significantly below that. But the EPA also came out with a health advisory number of
Right?
so low that labs can't generate that number.
Yeah.
It's a
Almost impossible to
It
get.
is. It's impossible to identify. And they came out and said that it's impossible to identify. That's a health advisory, so that's sort of a caution or a yellow light, you might say. The red light or the regulation has not been established yet, so we're not sure where that exactly is going to fall out. From what we're hearing at the moment is we're going to be good with what we have in the lake. There are other areas in Wisconsin that's not the case, and they're currently having problems, but an awful lot of research is being done. There's really only 2 technologies to combat that. One of them is granulated activated carbon. They're effectively either pressure vessels or filters that you would run your water through. The PFAS would adsorb or attach to that, and now you've got to dispose that as likely a hazardous waste. So that's a concern. The other technology is very similar. It uses resin ion exchange in order to do effectively the same thing. Northwestern University is working on a way to break the chemical structure of it. Small scale, it seems to be working. I don't know if they're going to be able to scale that up. So we're keeping our eyes on all this, trying to see what's happening. I was just in Aurora, Colorado. They've been doing their own, in their own pilot plant, they've been doing their own study for over 2.5 years, and found a lot of the same things that we're finding. Again, do I think we're going to have to do some treatment function? At this point, I don't. But we don't know. I guess we'll see when that regulation comes out from the EPA as to where they're going to be. We expect it's like lead in that no level is what you'd like, but no level is cost infinite. Right? So it's a balance between where is the biggest bang for the buck. You know, and we always reflect on it. We just had this in a seminar from Greg Harrington, Dr. Harrington from Madison, that we look at pathogen removal, and we're really, really good at that. And the risk the reason why we do it, the risk of pathogen removal is you're looking at the possibility of somebody getting sick for drinking 1 glass of water.
Right.
Because we're so good at that, we've moved on to some of this more chemical removal, and that you're looking at a lifetime exposure. You're looking at the chance of somebody getting an illness that is 1,000 times factor of safety, because they're taking animal studies and trying to extrapolate that or push that to human experience, and then saying we're going to have a lifetime exposure of that water. So it really, where the bang for the buck is on the pathogens, and we need to keep our focus and make sure that we're doing a good job there, because that has the biggest impact on our customers. Not to say we shouldn't look at the other stuff, because we are doing a good job there.
Once it hits the front page of the Sunday paper,
Yeah.
a few people
Oh, for sure.
start to think about it,
Oh, for sure. And we're thinking about it too. We're looking.
and
we're
I'll
looking at it.
transfer those calls to you. No. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt,
Oh, not at all.
but it did create a little problem, I think, in the neighborhood.
All right,
Ken?
then we need a motion to actually, unless there's any further questions or discussion on the capital budget for the water utility, we need a motion to approve.
Seifert moves to approve the various capital asset and project requests contained in the staff recommendation of 2023 water and sewer capital improvement plan budget.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call.
Dukenyak, aye.
Gale, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Second, aye.
Great. Yeah, your engineering, that was part of the reports process, so there was nothing to add on
No, I mean, unless you guys have any
the
questions.
engineering, right? Yeah, I just, I was tearing this apart, I saw that, so. All right, we're gonna move on to, item 10 then is the road improvement project, recommendations. So, Matt, you wanna? give
I
a-
will be taking that. Thanks, Ken. I believe this is the second time we brought this in front of the board, one being in 2021. So annually, we were doing the road projects every 2 years because of the funding amount. We were roughly getting 660,000, I believe. 330,000 of that was to pay back the $10 million bond that we had taken out in 2013. This past year, we did pay that bond down. So this cycle coming up in 2023, we have 1 million plus the 600 and some odd dollars that we had from the year before, and then we had some residual money left over from the past projects. So we have roughly $1.8 million to use this year in a project, which is significant. And then moving forward, we'll be doing this annually.
We're going back to an annual cycle?
We're going to try to get back to an annual cycle, 1 million a year, in hopes that future funding would increase. We did actually retain Rukert and Milky this past year to do analysis on our roadways, both ratings and a 20 to 30 year projected plan, so to speak. And that came back a little over 2 million a year annually that we would need to fund to be able to maintain our system about a 6.5 rating, which is about where we want to be, between 6 and 7. So we're significantly underfunded, and I think we've all heard that before, so this is not a surprise to anybody that sits up there or anybody that's on the council. So moving forward, what we do, just to give you a background real quick, so over the last, 5, 10 years, probably last decade, we've kind of moved towards more of a maintenance procedure instead of just replacement. So what that entails is we tend to look at roadways that are rated between 5 and 7. And those are probably where our sweet spot are to do a quick maintenance program that can be mill and fill, that can be crack sealing, that can be chip seals, anything along those maintenance procedures. And what we're focusing on here is trying to take that rating and move it up to an 8 or a 9 and prolong that life. So typically what you would do is you would see 2 to 3 maintenance procedures in the life of a road. What we had been doing prior to that was basically 0. Other than what DPW would do in replacements or maintenance on their own, which was unfortunately not enough because they were understaffed and at that time couldn't manage our roads. At this point, just looking at some of our data, our roads that are rated between 5 and 6 are 50% of our road network. We're looking at over 70 miles of roadway that are 5s and 6s. So you can imagine we are behind the 8 ball on this. So we did move towards that. You were provided, I believe, with every district in our overall of what we've proposed. Before you, you have a section that we're recommending and some alternatives if we so choose to, move a road out and place another one in. In the past, what we've done also is we've included an alternate or two, just in case bids did come in favorably. So if we'd like to proceed that way, we'd want to do that too as we're going through our conversations here. We also, this cycle, we do have a local road improvement project grants that we get every 2 years from Department of Transportation. Roughly $85,000 that has been dedicated towards Manitowoc Avenue, actually the #1 on our recommended streets. So I guess we can kind of go through that list. If you have questions, anything along those items, we can kind of go through those if you have questions, or if you like to proceed a different way, we can. But I can kind of hit some of those high points, if you will, and then we can kind of move on. I know in the past what we've done, and especially with a significant amount of money, we've gone more towards maintenance, but we're also trying to manage some of those 2s and 3s, the ones that are lower rated, try to cherry pick a few here and there that we felt would be, I guess, best described as a more strategic replacement, and that would be a full replacement into a subdivision that have a number of roads that are already like 6s or 7s or 5s. So we try to get that main entryway done, and then knowing in the next year or two that there's potential that those roadways would be hit. So
Was your analysis overall, does it traffic counts come into play, or is it just condition of the road?
we do look at traffic counts for some of them. So it's kind of tough to look at it. So I mean, we could look at all of our major roads and just do those, and then you would probably pretty much negate all of the interior roadway systems that we have in our subdivision. So it's trying to find that balance point. I know in the last few years we've done more collectors and arterials, if you will, throughout the area of the city. I think we're kind of getting some more complaints internally from residents and alderpersons as we go through it, so we've tried to add a few of those. And I think as we start doing an annual project, I think we can start maybe putting a little bit more attention and trying to find that balance between collector, interior, and then replacements. So we're kind of working through that, being our first time we're going in that cycle. So I guess if we want to kind of go through it, we did send this out to the alderpersons, I don't know, a month ago, Andrew? About a month ago. We received a few comments. The first 2 roads on Manitowoc and Marquette, predecessor before me, city engineer, actually pretty much committed to those 2 sections of roadway. The alderperson at that time. So we ended up putting it on there, and we actually do have that LRIP. So the funding on the cost is not subtracted out of there. So, you can think of it as we have a plus 85 in the bank that will be refunded. So that program, if anybody is unaware, that is you pay for it, and then you file for reimbursement. So it's fronted by the city, and then we get reimbursed the $85,000 at the end of the project once it's been accepted. So usually that takes about a year or two, but that money will be coming back at one point. And then obviously we've been working with our water and sewer utility counterparts, make sure that we can try to manage our roadway systems when they come through and do their work, and try to still provide a good product at the end, and not something that's just a patched up road or damaged road. You'll notice that Susan, Griffin, Belle Beth, and Verdev, those are all 7s, 6s. One of the things you'll note on those are only, I believe, 9 years old at this point. They're built in 2013. That was still in the era of what they called the super pave mixes. They tended to use more recycled material, less asphalt, cement. Basically made that product pretty brittle, if you ask me. When we've been seeing higher failures, earlier failures. 2014, they actually started going away from that type of mix. They've gone into the ones that we do see now, which tend to last longer, more flexible, more asphalt, less recycled materials. Tends to be a better product. So I would imagine that through the process of the water and sewer utility, as they're going through doing their projects, there's going to be more damage to the road than it's really worth just kind of patching and repairing. So we thought we'd mill, overlay, and kind of get a new surface, leave it out of there, and then we're out of there for a number of years. So that's why those 4 sections are on there.
We're doing, we're doing work. Susan sounds familiar. We're doing work there, right?
Yes.
And then Bill Buffett, Verdev, and Fred's neighborhood, we're doing work.
Yeah, we've called that the Forest Hill Manor subdivision. Yes.
Right.
So with those 4 projects, there will be some cost sharing. Those details are to be worked out with the water and sewer utility. But at this point, obviously, when we do a major project of $1.8 million, we're going to get a much better unit price for asphalt and any kind of milling than they would ever. So we're going to kind of work together, kind of take advantage of that for their product too. So that's the reason why those 4 are on there.
And I know it's just generally overall, these remnant
Yes, most of those were built probably back in the early 80s, I believe. You were around, right?
So are we good? We're not tearing them out, though. We're cracking and punching them down and
Well,
going over the top?
so
Or
what we're finding, so like for Manitowoc and Marquette, and what we've done, we're going to go back on the past history of some of these. What we were finding, we were using the process of patching, milling, and crack and seeding on some of them. What we were finding, though, the ones that were built 40 years ago, which were kind of in that sweet spot, a lot of them were failing from ground up. They were built on clay, no stone, no subgrade improvement, so it was built on clay. So what we were finding as we were going through some of these during the construction phase is, as we were milling these out and going through and crack and seeding, we were only finding 2, maybe 3 inches of concrete remaining. So we had lost anywhere from 3 to 4 inches of concrete through just deterioration and age. So a lot of the roads that we're looking at where we're just going to be Manitowoc and Marquette, what we're going to do is we're going to patch. We're probably going to mill a little bit in the curb and gutter and maybe a little bit out. We're not going to crack and seed this year. We're just going to overlay right into the curb and gutter pan, do some improvements on the inlets, and try to get another 10 years. Most of your concrete, if you get 60 years, you're doing good on your initial investment. So if we can get another 15 years out of these road sections, being low volume, it's going to put us right around 55 to 60 years. I think we're hitting our sweet spot, and we're taking advantage as we can. But this is probably the best maintenance procedure you could do other than replacement. And at this point, I just can't recommend that.
Those, like I mean, there's the problem with that road is just rides rough. And there's some serious joint cracks. I mean, they're going to reflect back to the surface. How long is that going to take?
That usually takes 1 year, in all honesty. We've been working with our DPW, and they are usually out there the next summer, routing out any kind of cracks as they start. So when you do a crack and seal procedure like this, if you get on in the first year, so basically what would happen is your cracks actually double every year. So if your crack is only halfway across the road, within the next year it will be all the way across. So if they can get on it in the first year, it actually greatly reduces. So that section that we have from Quincy to Manor, that you probably drove over to get to the section of Marquette or Manitowoc, that was done 8 or 10 years ago. So that's actually in really good shape. Once again, it was DPW the next year getting out there, doing the standard maintenance of crack and sealing. So we're working with them. It's been a really good partnership. So it's actually starting to prolong our improvements over our concrete. So that's what we're trying to take advantage of, that 12 to 15 years. Really, this should be an 8 to 10 year project, but the way it's being handled by them through the maintenance is actually increasing our lifespan on those.
We are not like they did. We're not cutting those old runs out.
No.
Over the top.
No, so for Drexel, it's a completely different maintenance procedure.
Okay.
And
All
that
right.
one, actually, Drexel does have stone under it. And we, went with more of that rebar improvement. So that one was just more for long term. This is just to get us by.
Ed, can you provide a little more detail, railroad crossing improvements? That has been a thorn in the 3rd District side for many, many years. And obviously now that has moved out of the 3rd District, but those neighbors there still have issues. Mike Simmons and I had visited with the neighbors in that area probably 3 or 4 times. And I know so what can actually be done? I know that you can't touch the track area, but the approaches that are leading up to the tracks, correct?
Correct. So last budget cycle, $150,000 was budgeted. We felt it'd be the proper way to do it is put it under this project. We can have the same contractor, same type of work. But yes, what we've done is we actually surveyed it, so we'll be changing the profile slightly to basically run better with that concrete crossing and mill those down, get them to a point where it's a little smoother. Things that you can probably plan on would be like crossings at Pewitz Road down by the DPW. That one was done 10 years ago, and further down that line on Oakwood, that was also improved. So the rides improved greatly.
The one by the yard is smooth as silk compared to
so
Pewtz and Oakwood.
I think
right?
that's the intent, and that's the purpose of us doing it. Actually, further down on Pewitz, east of Chicago, we did that probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
That's what you can expect.
The one on Old Ryan appears to be the worst one, but there's not a lot of traffic there.
There's not a lot of traffic. I think as we move forward, we'll probably start requesting some money to start addressing these. We just thought these first two were probably the ones that carry the most traffic,
Thank you.
and try to take care of those right away.
You guys want to go through this street by street, or how do you want to approach this?
I don't think so either. I mean, I had brief discussions with Matt. My district third, and because of the changes in the district boundaries, I moved to request based on the residents' concerns. I had nothing this year. So, and I did tell Matt, I mean, he knows, we had two major projects within the last 4 years. What was Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania was
Yep,
done.
from Drexel
Yep.
to Rawson.
And then last year's. So,
I guess one note to South Clement, we're looking to do a maintenance procedure on that, which we've done in the past, which is our chip seals. There are a number of different products that we can use. We'll kind of try to
Good
work
chip
with.
seal and Clement? Did you tell Alderman Kirkowski this?
Well, that's the thing, is we'll kind of try to work with Steve on this one. This is actually, once again, this is a perfect spot to do it, and it's a rural section, it's gravel
People
shoulders.
hate that.
well, and they
Yeah.
do, but you know what? And I've had two big ones, and I think Matt knows people were complaining like crazy immediately after the project was done. If you drive down those roads now, I wouldn't say they're perfect, but they're significantly better once that repair system was put
I
in place.
understand.
It took a while
People hate them, though.
to clean all that stuff up. What did it take, Matt? 3 or 4
Yeah.
swipes at it because stuff kept getting loose all the
And
time.
that's, and there's different ways of handling that, and what we've done in the past is we've used a fog seal over it, which actually does hold in that stone a little better. So that might be
That's the one they used on County Line?
yes, we used the scrub seal on County Line along with a fog seal. So it tends to
Weird surface.
hold the stone in better, and actually seals it up a little nicer. Gives it a little blacker look. We could do that. There are also things called slurry seals, which is more asphalt and that. There are micro mills and fills, which Pleasant Prairie has actually been incorporated into their program for the past 5 or 6 years. We haven't had a conversation with them yet, but it seems to be a product or a procedure that seems to be positive for simple maintenance and very cost effective.
And I know Matt had provided a cost analysis between that chip seal and the complete, what is it, mill and overlay?
Yeah.
Is that what
Yeah.
And then I explained that to the residents, and it made their jaws drop a little bit. Said, hey, you know what? Couple $100,000 difference in price. And again, the two main roads that have been done in the third district, I drive them both pretty much daily. I think they're in very good shape.
I mean, for comparison, you guys probably don't have this sheet, but I actually asked Andrew, our design engineer, to do this. It's about $6 a square yard to do a chip seal and a fog seal with it. And then to do a mill and overlay, a 2-inch mill and overlay, you're looking at about $29 a square yard. Significant. There's a significant cost savings.
Yep.
Granted, chip seals, they'll get you, 5 to 8 years. Typically, you'll have to do another one. Mill and fill will get you 10 to 12. So I still think it's a pretty good deal. But it's just an acceptance amongst the residents and administration to move forward with that. But I think at this point, when you're getting $1 million and you need $2 million, it's a good option to incorporate into the system.
Right, so generally speaking, we're in concurrence of the projects he's pointed out are good to go. Yeah. Is there any, like Matt said, we typically identify a couple small alternatives in case bid quoting comes in our favor. Do that now, or you want to come back and deal with that?
We can always add that in after the project comes through. You know, we can bring this back to you guys, and then we
Okay.
can go through that process if we so choose and just see where our bids come in at. You know, we're, as everyone's aware, we're in a time of this world where it's uncertain on the cost. You know, and obviously we're going through elections right now. You could see a change in how things act, but I would feel more comfortable, I think, going forward with recommendations here, and then coming back if those prices come favorable. I mean, we're probably looking to bid this out in the next 2 months. And our plan is to try to get it out very early in 2023 to try to get those favorable bid prices. And then if we do get them, we'll be back in January, February to discuss this a little further with you.
So keep your notes.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Matt. All right, so any other discussion on the road project? Bob, anything? Fred? All right, we'll take a motion then on that.
Dukenyak move to approve the recommended road improvement projects to be advertised for public bid for construction in 2023 to the Common Council for approval.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dukenyak, aye.
Gale, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Sigali, aye.
I was waiting for one of you guys. I think Bob gave me the look. Get off the Schneider, right? So, all right, item 11 is adjournment.
Sigali moves to adjourn.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dukenyak, aye.
Gale, aye.
Seifert, aye.
There you go.
Sigali, aye.
All right, thank you all.
You got it, Matt.